Hey everyone, it's time for another mailbag episode. We have been after your questions about everything and anything to do with the world of cycling, and yeah, we've got a few that have come in already. So let's get started with this one from Kim W, who sent this on Instagram. She says, "I live at 28,000, or 28,000, maybe she'd live at the top of Everest, 2,840 meters. All of my rides involve long climbs of up to 3,350 meters. What's the power difference compared to riding at sea level?" So I'm guessing, how much power loss do you have when you go to altitude compared to sea level? I suppose in your careers, did you feel it?
Oh yeah, I have a spreadsheet for dealing with every single altitude band. I've never seen one from 2,500 to 3,000, let alone over 3,000 meters, but it is substantial. Um, I would say, just spitballing, like, not the perfect chart that I don't have pulled up in front of me, but it would probably be at least 40 watts difference from your sea level.
Wow, big difference. And when you were riding, what does that feel like? I've just been up mountains and relative altitude, but I can't tell you if I've been over the 3,000 threshold that everyone talks about. Can you really feel that difference, that step up?
Yes, you can. Well, first of all, the air is thinner up there, so you roll faster. You actually, with the same felt effort, you're rolling, you're moving faster because the air is thinner, there's less air resistance. On the other side, that also means if you don't do any counter measures, you lose muscle mass because your body goes, this is easy, I don't need these muscles anymore, so you might lose muscle mass as well. And basically, you breathe like a fish on the land. Your mouth is wide open. You breathe as fast and as hard and as deep as you can, and you just don't get enough oxygen out of the whatever 5 or 6 liters of lung volume you have. You fill your lungs, and it's just not enough oxygen in the air to give your muscles the supply they need, and that's where you feel power drops and everything, just your entire performance drops.
Okay. We've got another one. A brilliant name, by the way. This is from Fat Daddy AJ, which is first
Say the
time.
name again. I want to hear it again. Fat Daddy AJ.
Fat Daddy AJ, yeah. First time messages to the podcast. He asks, how do you overcome the fear after a bad crash? I know you've both had serious crashes on Alpine descents, yet the next year we see you bombing down Alpine passes. So I guess, after a bad crash, how do you bounce back?
I think youth. Youth is how you bounce back because the longer and longer I went in my career, the more difficult it was to pop up after a bad crash. I did break bones. I did finish my Tour de France not once but twice in an ambulance in a time trial of all things. Crashed in 2 time trials my whole life, and both of them were in the Tour de France. But I never had anything like really scary. But I recently, in the middle of the summer, did break my collarbone, and that was a big shock. So I was 16 years as a pro, never broke my collarbone, 16 years retired, and then wind up breaking my collarbone. And ever since then, these last couple months, I must admit, I am absolutely like a grandma going down these descents, and I'm a lot more cautious when I'm on gravel. So it's you got to get over it. It's your job. But like once you start getting older and you have kids and other things you're thinking of doing the rest of your life, it gets a little bit more difficult, I think. What do you think, Yenzi?
Yes, being young helps, of course. And if it's not a crash where you cannot stand up anymore, the first thing you, as a normal cyclist, you do, jump back up, check your bike, check if the bike's okay, and jump back on it. And only then you start checking your body. But you kind of like you trick yourself before your brain sets in a rational way and goes, hey, maybe you want to go to the ambulance. You have to be back on a bike and go, the boys need me, the team needs me, I need to keep going. And then you check your body. So that helps because you're already back in motion. If you end up in a hospital with the ambulance, I had that as well once, then if you're young, you still feel fearless and invincible. if you're older, I try to have the logic approach. I told myself, okay, if 30 bike riders in front of me can take this turn at this speed, just by pure logic, me on 31st position, I must make this turn as well, like the 30 riders in front of me. It's dry roads, we all have the same conditions, so it must work. Don't break, don't break, don't break, don't break, and then you make it. And once you push through that barrier once, it becomes a lot easier. But also, like Bobby said, once you get older, your priorities change. You have children at home and you want to be home with them. And in the ideal scenario, 50 years down the road, you want to maybe become a grandpa, or 30 years down the road. So since I did not like to call myself a shitty descender, I invented a new category for myself. I was a careful descender. I just tried to stay away from trouble. I was not slow. I was not terrible. I was just careful. So that was my own category.
Just on that, because you obviously had that really serious crash in 2009. When you got back on the bike in training, was that still in your mind? Were you thinking about that crash, or do you just go, right, I'm back on the bike, game face, let's go?
Not in training, not in racing, not in the sprints. Only when we had downhills and we would go about, 40 miles an hour, 65, 70 kilometers an hour. That's, I call them the bone crusher downhills. Like when you go down, you break bones. When you go down at 40, it hurts like hell. But very likely you can get back up and back on the bike. So I left my comfort zone after that crash when we hit, 40 plus miles or whatever, some 60, 70 kilometers an hour. That's when I felt uncomfortable, and it did cross my mind once or twice, yes.
Okay. Completely different note now. Vern Lobes sent this one in via Instagram. He said, we all know that Pogacar would win wearing rainbows, but how many will he win in the jersey? For reference, Mark Cavendish won 15 in 2011. That's the first benchmark he set. The record is Freddie Mertens, who he got 44. Now, Pogacar last year got 25 race wins from 57 race days. So I suppose, where do you see him? How many races do you see him picking up next year in that rainbow jersey?
Well, let's just say cycling changes at the drop of a hat. I mean, you could have a season like he had this year, and then next year not nearly as good. Hopefully he'll be healthy. Hopefully he won't have any crashes. But there's no way at this moment to keep him from winning at least a quarter, not half like he did this year, but at least a quarter of the races that he's entering, because he's just riding his bike at a totally different level. And it's going to be interesting, but I'm sure he's not going to have any issues with the curse of the rainbow jersey next year.
Definitely no curse of the rainbow jersey for him. And I am a big fan of Tadej Pogacar. But after a year like this, where everything did fall in line for him, he achieved history, making, the Grand Slam of cycling with the Giro, the Tour, and the Worlds. It would be almost impossible to repeat that, have another 25 wins like that. He wins anything between 10 and 15 races for sure. But again, 25, I wish the best for him. But to have another season like that would be almost unheard of. So, but for sure, he will be spectacular. He will be great and easily win 10 to 15 races next year.
Of course, there's the rainbow jersey features in one of the greatest bits of sporting law. Bobby, you know about the Madden curse in American football. There is the rainbow jersey curse. Did you guys ever hear anyone that was wearing the rainbow stripes talk about it in the peloton? Is it a thing that exists in the pro peloton?
I don't remember guys thinking about it, but it definitely happened. There would be a world champion that would be in the gruppetto with us. He wasn't riding at that same level. I think that's kind of natural when you have such a peak that maybe you kind of overcook it a little bit, and the next year you're not great, but you do have the most recognizable jersey in the peloton. So every single TV camera is on you. Every single fan's eyeballs are directed directly at you. And that's a pressure, and you got to get that monkey off your back right away, because the longer you go, the more lore is going to build up behind that curse. And the more pressure you're going to have, and ultimately the more difficulty you're going to have getting that first win. But it just seems like get that first win out of the way so that people stop talking about it.
Yeah, and very few have done it as quickly as Pogacar. It's not even 2025 and he's already got 1 from 1. So yeah, well done with him. Liz Bernstein sent us a message and she said, I do some local running and bike races. I always get a little nervous at the start. Do pros get nervous, especially since it's more dangerous and there's a lot more on the line? And do those nerves go away after time? So, when do you feel nerves as a pro, and do you learn to deal with it?
I think in my case, I was the most nervous when we had the big team plan. When everything had to fall in line, like whatever. I had to cover the breakaways. I had to jump in the break, then wait on the next climb. Fabian Cancellara would lead them up to me. Then we would together take over. And Andy Schleck and Frankie and Carlos Sastre would be there. And Inigo Cuesta does a pull. And I was nervous about these days because there were so many moving bits and pieces. They all had to come together. Plus, there's another 20 teams. They have a different plan they want to put into action. That's when I felt the most pressure on my shoulders. A normal race is just a race after a while. It's a job, and you have this positive energy, this positive excitement, but you're not frightened, you're not nervous. Only at some special occasions. I mean, don't forget, I did probably 1,500 race days in my career as a junior, as a kid, as an amateur. So, of course, there is time to get used to the pressure feeling. But yes, even in my last years, at certain occasions, I still had this nervousness.
Nerves per se. I think you're only nervous when you have an expectation on yourself. And that's adrenaline, that's motivation. The problem is when you're on the start line and you're not nervous. I mean, I would take 2 espressos to try to, amp myself up, and then basically be falling asleep on the start line a couple times for a couple years, because there was no expectation. I knew I wasn't good, and I'm like, it was drudgery, right? So I think nerves are a good thing as long as you can control them. And that means that you're expecting something out of yourself that day, and that's a good thing.
Did you ever have a feeling where the nerves overcame you and you were so nervous you did the wrong thing because you were thinking about doing something wrong or making a mistake?
Yes, with that many races and like moments where you have to take decisions, yep, you can do mistakes. I had a race where Tour de Hovar, where I was the leader for the team, and I was just trying to be too perfect to make everything so correctly that I missed the entire race because I was just trying to be too smart and saving it for that one punchy attack, and I just messed it up. 2002 or whatever that year was. So yeah, that was a clear example where the nerves gotten the better of me.
Well, I was going to say no, but I realized that my last Tour de France was the crash in the time trial, and I crashed on basically the second turn of the time trial. So I thought I was dialed in. I thought I was absolutely ready to have a ripper of a ride. But looking back at it now, that may have been nerves, because who crashes in the second turn of a time trial in the Tour de France and ends up in an ambulance without having some sort of nerve issue? But I guess I kind of deleted that out of my mind until just now.
Sorry for dredging that one up. Now, this is another great name, Night Sweats. No first name. I presume that's not their legal name. But they ask, what are things that cyclists do that are a waste of time? And the example they gave is quite interesting, like ingesting ketones. And what do they skip or not that could be useful? So it's things that cyclists do or don't do that are useless and useful. And what should they do?
Well, I think that anything that you do that makes you feel more confident, more relaxed, stronger is not a waste. I mean, I've seen many, many things. I've done many, many things where I look back and say, oh man, that was just a waste of time. But I don't think there's anything, especially a product that across the board is a waste of time. I've definitely done some crazy things. I think the craziest thing ever, which was absolutely a waste of time, was, Yenzi, do you remember those power cranks that you had to keep perfect power around the whole 360-degree part of the pedal stroke? And if you didn't, they just dropped. And like that was a waste of time, because it was trying to improve your pedal stroke, and if you lapsed in concentration for a second, you would basically crash. So of all the crazy products that I tried, that was probably the one to me that was the waste of time. Everything else I think has its place. I mean, but the most important thing that I think riders forget to do, or do only in the off season and then kind of let it slide during the season, is just basic core stability, strength work. I wish the years that I did that when we were at CSC in 04 and 05 in the beginning of 06, I just felt better. I rode better. I seemed to breathe better. And then when I kind of got a little bit complacent and lazy in the middle of 2006, 2007, and then when I retired in 2008, I wasn't doing that. So that's a big one for me.
And to our listeners and viewers, Bobby and me, we were roommates for a very long time, and we were so opposite. Bobby was doing the foam rolling, the stretching, the core muscles, and reading books. How do I become a better speaker? How do I become a better bike rider? How do I become a better human being, and so on? And I was just laying on my bed doing nothing at all but playing Game Boy, building up empires on my Game Boy games, or catching Pokemons in my Game Boy. And we were both good riders because we believed in our strategy. Bobby needed all that. The extra training, the extra exercises, the extra stretching, that made him good. I was just, no, erase and rewind. The bike is done, the job is done, get my Game Boy, get my book out. So whatever floats your boat is good for you. But I have to say, maybe shame on me a little bit, I should have done more stretching. I think I could have been quite a few percent better with more stretching. Core muscle training maybe as well, but stretching in particular was always my weak spot. So I guess...
Think how many years that took off your career, Yenzi.
Yeah.
On to 50.
Correct. I would be still racing Pogacar these days. Absolutely. So yeah, stretching, I think it's important. Core muscle training, like Bobby said, I would really highly recommend that to any ambitious bike rider today.
I have one more thing that I think would have made a bit of a difference as well. So when we get into the hotel rooms, we have our suitcases and then 2 big bottles of water, like 1.5 liter bottles of water on the nightstand, right? So I would constantly be taking little sips throughout the night. By after dinner, time to go to bed, I'd have to go out into the hallway and get another 1.5 liter bottle, which I would have had finished by the time that we went to the bus in the morning. And I always looked over there, and that big bottle of water still had the seal on it most of the time, because Jens just didn't drink. I didn't understand. I'm over there like surfing down 3 liters of water, and he may crack it open, to get the toothpaste taste out of his mouth, but he never drank anything.
How did you manage that? I can't go on any bike ride without drinking water. You were doing the Tour de France and you just sort of, no, that's weakness, right?
I kept it very simple. Maybe it was not the perfect way, but it helped me for a long time though. But maybe, okay, here's my one tip. We had an osteopath, Ole. Ole Ekblad, I believe, from Denmark. And I swear by everything what is important to me, Ole was that close to make a dead person walking again. Ole was an absolute, out of your mind, unimaginable legend. And I was really skeptical because I believe in school science. I believe in surgery and in medicine, things I can see and touch. And then Ole comes and he had this really deep voice. Said, I can feel the energy is blocked. And bloody hell, he really made me better. And he gave me this little breathing exercise. I go, okay, whenever you feel stressed, or you want to calm down, or you want to prepare an attack, or an important meeting, or you want to go back to bed, have 5 really deep breaths into your belly. Not like this, but in your belly. In with your nose, and like powerful breathing out with your mouth. And I still do that today when I feel stressed, or not every day, but when every now and then it's still, yep, I remember Ole, I'm gonna do 5 times deep breathing, and it helps you to calm down, to relax, to refocus as well.
Let's just say, because all the CSC guys had that deep breathing exercise, and let's just say when you're walking down the hallway and you hear this animal, I'll try to do it.
Exactly,
So
that's how it is. Exactly.
You hear all the guys in the room doing that. It is like, yeah, it'll turn some heads for sure. But
wasn't that also
really
a sign
worked
if
for
everyone
us,
was stressed, breathing out that someone was worth steering clear of if they just heard them doing that?
Oh yeah, there was rumors about what was going on in the rooms when those noises were coming out of them. Put it that way.
Okay, final question for this week, and this is from, I'm going to get this name wrong, so apologies. I think it's Yori Junghans, and he's suggested something quite good. This is about innovation. He says, can you imagine a pursuit-style stage for a start? That's kind of a short mountainous time trial where slipstream wouldn't be so powerful. It's done in Nordic combined and biathlon, so that the leader of the race would start first, and whoever finishes first is the new leader. So you'd go off in intervals based on how far behind you are. And the guy at the top wins the race. I'm not talking about a Grand Tour level, but just to try it out and change up the game for the athletes and viewers. What do you think about that as a proposal?
I like it.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
Kinda cool. That's kind of cool. I mean, like you said, we see it in Nordic racing. He said it's the pursuit, but it's almost like a handicap, right? So if you're leading, you get a 20-second start over second place and so on and so forth. I think that would be pretty cool. Obviously, drafting even uphill, it would be hard to start, but like we see it in Nordic racing all the time. There's just guys going off, ping, 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 and whoever wins. So I kind of like that idea. I mean, we've done some crazy things in this sport. A team time trial, which turns into an individual time trial at the end. Like you're working together and then, basically a lead out for the guy, and that guy actually wins, not the team itself. So even though it was a team time trial, it was an individual stage. So, why not? I mean, we see some crazy things, and, we want TV viewership to go up. We want people to be more interested in the sport. I'm for something like that.
Yeah, me too, absolutely. We could even go more spectacular. Have all of them starting on their bike in a starting machine like on the track at the position they would have with the times referred into distance. So we have a drone flight, and the last of GC stands at a kilometer 0 sign, and Pogacar would be like 780 meters further down the road in his starting machine waiting for his start. They all get released at the same time because, we have the distance, and not times, but the distance. So, and then whoever crosses the line in whatever 5 miles down the road, whoever crosses that line first is the winner. That would be so cool. It would need some trial and error to come up with how many points and times refer to how many meters of a handicap, because you still want to have good riders to win. But, but yeah, that would be absolutely fantastic.
I mean, it reminded me of the short-lived Hammer series. I don't know if you remember that, where it was sort of points, and they did a sort of team time trial pursuit thing to end, where it basically ended up with 2 teams of like 9 racing each other in full TT gear. But I'm just sitting here saying, you guys are enthusiastic about this. Think of all the guys that are retired that now run races. I think we try and get this on the calendar for next year.
Yeah, absolutely. We
on the Tour of
we
Luxembourg,
put the news out. Absolutely.
But yeah, that's another episode of the Mailbag wrapped up. If you want to send us your messages, just message any of us, or you can send us a message on Shock Giraffe, any of our accounts, or you can just drop it into oddtandem@shockgiraffe.com. I forgot the email address for a second there. And we'll get your messages read out next month's episode. But thank you to everyone who's dropped us a message. Thanks to everyone who's listening. And of course, thank you to everyone who's subscribed to our Patreon, particularly the person who is not me, who is also called Mark Payne. It was very weird getting an email to say, thank you, Mark Payne, for subscribing. Brilliant. But yeah, if you want to keep listening to the podcast, just subscribe below and you can listen to the next one. Till then, bye.
Can I say one special thing to one of our Patreon members, Philip Shama? Philip had a terrible bike crash. He just texted me the other day. He was in ICU for 34 days. He has all but 2 or maybe 4 ribs plated. So his entire, I think we have 26 ribs. 24 of them are actually, or 22 of them are actually plated. So I just wanted to give a special shout out to Philip. Glad to hear that you're on the comeback trail. You're off of the supplemental oxygen breathing machine. You're going to be heading to the normal ward instead of the ICU. So we just wanted to give you a special shout out, Philip, and all the best in your recovery.